Hey guys, it's Dr. Hayes, and I wanted to make a video to talk about the readings that you had from They Say, I Say for this week, for Tuesday, chapters 9 and 10. So I wanted to make a little bit of a video to talk about the concepts from these chapters before we meet up for discussion or anything, just in case anybody can't log in or for whatever reason. So you had chapters 9 and 10. So the subjects that we're going to talk about today are your writer's voice and the concept from chapter 10, which is meta commentary. This word, I've written it down, meta commentary. So we'll talk more about that when we get there. But both, I had you read these chapters together because both of these ideas deal with the way your essay sounds, specifically the word choice you use that makes your essay sound like you. I often tell students that your essay, like, it's obvious whenever it's your voice that's in there. That's why by the end of a semester, a lot of times a professor can look through, I tell students this all the time, it's like a magic trick. Like, we can look through a stack of essays, and once we've read several of the things you've written already for the semester, especially in English 101 when you write more essays, and even with your reading responses and things for my class, but if you're in a class with a professor or multiple classes with a professor and they've read something that you've written several times, like they've read several samples, by the time they get to the end, they could probably hide the names on the essays and be able to kind of pick out who wrote what on each essay, just depending on like the writer's voice. It sounds like you. So once they get to know you and get to know your writing voice, like, I can go through reading responses and pick out whose is whose, or essays and things after I've read through some of your drafts, and I can pick out whose is whose based on it. It sounds like that student. And so the reason for that is because the more you write and the more practice you get at it, you will develop your writing voice. You will develop the voice you use that sounds like you. Now, it might not sound like the you with your friends when you're hanging out, or the you with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or the you with your family, or even the you at work, but it's a version of you. It's the educated you, the academic version of you. But it's still, it's your personality in the paper. So that's what chapter 9 is all about, kind of putting your own voice to it. So there's a couple things I wanted to point out that they say that I think are really good. One of them is that a lot of times students will come into college thinking that when they write, they have to make everything sound super college-y, like official and fancy and formal. And they struggle with writer's block when they're writing through their essays, especially in their first year. And they know what they want to say, like they know the information, but they don't know how to make it sound smart or sound good. And so they sort of beat their head against the wall trying to make their paper sound educated and sound smart. But they're operating off of this misunderstanding that that's necessary, that it's necessary for you to make your paper sound fancy. And there's a good reason for that. As the authors of their textbook point out, a lot of times academic writing is stuffy and fluffy and kind of convoluted and hard to understand. Even academic people feel that way. Like, why did you say it in such a complicated way? Right? Why do you have to make it where it's almost impossible to understand? And so the theory behind that is that in academia, people who do articles and write essays for a living, we have this theory that the more complex someone's article or essay is, the less they understand their topic. They're trying to camouflage and hide their only sort of limited grasp of the topic. They're trying to hide that behind fancy sentences and fancy words and big words and fancy grammar. And so usually a really sort of complex wording of a sentence or a concept in a essay or a book or something like that, a lot of times that is a smoke screen or a camouflage, a way to hide that the person doesn't 100% understand what they're even talking about. And so there's a good rule of thumb is if you truly understand your topic, you should be able to explain it to someone who doesn't know anything about it. You should be able to explain it to someone who's completely not knowledgeable in that field at all, right? If the only people who understand what you're talking about are other people on your level, like your advanced level in your field, then you do not have a good grasp of your topic. If you can explain it to someone who doesn't know it, then you know it, right? And so that's kind of a test of, can you explain it to someone else? And so a lot of times students are afraid or don't think they're allowed to use their writer's voice that sounds like them because they think it's supposed to sound fancy and stuffy like academic writing is supposed to sound. But it's okay. It's getting more and more and more okay. Over the last, I would say, a couple of decades, it has really sort of become more the fashion or more the practice in academic writing to have a little bit more personalization in there. I've talked about this in class because some of you have asked, can we use first person, right? Is that allowed? And so I always say you have to know how to use it correctly. This isn't your diary. It's not a Facebook post or something like that. But it is more and more acceptable to use first person in a limited way once you learn how. And that's what some of the concepts from the reading from today discuss, the inserting yourself in. So you can say it, like if I just say, hey, explain to me, what's your topic about? And you took a few minutes saying, well, basically what I'm trying to say is blah, 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 blah. Well, sometimes, and the authors talk about this, I've done this, I'll say, well, just write that. You just explained it to me. Write that down. You should be writing that down, right? And so, and students are kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess I understood it better than I thought. And so sometimes explaining it in a simple way makes you realize that you did understand it more than you thought you did. So don't be afraid to sort of make it sound like it's your voice with some of your personality. It doesn't have to be a journal entry like, well, then I was thinking blah, blah, blah. But then it occurred to me that that's not true either. You don't have to track your thought process in every step in first person like that, but you can still insert some personality in your voice in your essay and make it sound like you. The sort of the most appropriate places for that, as far as if you're going to do first person or tell a personal story, there's probably 3 instances where it's pretty safe as a beginner to kind of start that. One is in the introduction. If it's appropriate in the introduction to give some background about how this topic connects to you personally. That's not always the case for something that you're writing, but if you stumbled upon this research idea or this question that your essay is attempting to answer, if you stumbled upon this question in sort of an interesting way or some sort of a personally significant way, a lot of times academic writers and scholars will include that sort of backstory in the introduction. Another place is in the conclusion, when you're kind of wrapping things up and you're letting the reader know what you'd like them to do as a result of reading your essay. Like where do we go from here? We talked about that before with the so what, right? Like what now? So maybe sometimes first person and applying some personal perspective is appropriate in that area. The third area is if some of your evidence in the body of your text, in the body of your essay, is personal experience. Like you've cited an expert or two, maybe a study, you've cited your field research, maybe you have an article or a book or something. So you have all of that. Maybe you want to strengthen that research with some of your own personal experience. Like not only do the experts say this, not only does research support this, but my personal experience also supports this. And then you can put in your personal experience. Now that personal experience can't be the only evidence you give to support your thesis, but it can add to the more official forms of evidence that you have in your essay. So those are some good places to start. In chapter 10, they talk also about sort of inserting yourself in your transitions and in your counter arguing. So when we get to meta commentary, we'll talk about that as well. So that's maybe a little bit more of an advanced technique that, if you feel like you're there, you can try it out. But I wanted to talk about in chapter 9, they recommend this sort of translation recipe is what they call it. When we talked about inserting a quotation into the essay back weeks ago, when we were talking about how to incorporate a source into your essay, one of the ways is to incorporate a direct quotation, and you need a quotation sandwich. This is a little bit of a review. You introduce who's saying the quotation, you give the quotation, then the bottom bread is you're commenting on the quotation in your words, right? So they've already introduced the idea of this quotation sandwich. Well, the translation recipe is it's similar. It applies to that in some ways. So the translation recipe specifically applies to if you're quoting someone who does have that complicated academic way of describing something, and you feel like you need to translate that for the reader. So you include, this is so-and-so, and this is the book he read, and this is basically what he said, and you give a little bit of a quote, or you might even paraphrase what he said. Then you say essentially what he's saying is, and you boil it down into like a short, easily understood expression. I think what makes it go beyond the quotation sandwich into an actual translation recipe is if the thing that you are translating, the source you provide is sort of especially complicated, and then the translation you provide is sort of brilliantly simple, right? And so you can that's a way that you can include your own voice into your essay by putting in layman's terms or real speech what this critic or this scholar or this study has shown, right? An example they give you is this literary scholar who's talking about an author, and they're like, this one critic says that she is dramatic and overly emphasizes things and blah blah blah, and then she goes, basically she's a control freak, right? So she uses that little bit of slang and the casual language to restate what the critic was saying. That's sort of an artistic choice to maybe use sparingly. Your whole essay can't be in slang like that, but a well-placed translation into modern slang is sometimes very effective in academic writing. Using the everyday language is also useful for teaching yourself the concepts that you're trying to learn. Like I said a while ago, if you can't say it plainly, sometimes that means you don't understand it. So that's the way that you can sort of check yourself to make sure you actually understand what you're writing about. Can you boil this down for me in a normal, everyday way? Like, can you tell it to, tell it to me like I'm in elementary school, right? And that I need you to spell it out. You can do that in your paper. You can have a very simplified explanation. You've provided the complicated source. It shows that you've shown, hey, I have found the people, with credentials, the authorities who are saying it officially. And then my very simple yet accurate translation of what they've said proves that I understand it. Because I can explain it in a more straightforward way. That means I understand it. So you're showing the reader and your professors in any class that you understand the scholars that you're citing. So it actually serves that function as well. I think that's all I'm going to say about that chapter for now. Let's move on to chapter 10. But don't get me wrong, is the title of this chapter. The Art of Meta Commentary. So this word, meta commentary, right? It's kind of a big word. I know we have several people in our class who are English as a second language. Maybe English is not your first language, so I thought I would break this down a little bit. Meta, the first word, means, let me write it, beyond or outside. So a meta is kind of a prefix that means beyond or more, or sometimes outside. Not just outside generally, but more in the sense of standing outside of a thing so that you can comment on it, that you can observe it, right? That, you know, if something is meta, it is a good example. If you've ever seen Deadpool, if you're familiar with the character Deadpool, all of his stuff, his movies, his comics, everything, they're very meta. You could describe Deadpool as meta because he exists outside of his product. He knows he's a comic book character. He knows he's in a movie. He knows he's in a comic. He comments on it. He knows that there are other characters who have their own stories and he comments on it, right? Deadpool is very meta. So that's what that prefix meta means, sort of beyond or standing outside. Then we have comment, which is like an observation, right? Some sort of observation or comment or thing that you're noting about something, right? And so a commentary, in this sense, is a collection. I kind of wrote that kind of crazy on the side. So a commentary is a collection of observations. A commentary comes from a root word that means notebook. You know, that's another, like, notebook. Notebook is like another way to say commentary, or commentary is another way to say notebook. Yeah, right. It's like they mean the same thing. So, but a commentary is a collection of observations, right? And about something. So a meta commentary is a collection of observations made from outside, made from beyond. So when you're talking about academic writing, meta commentary is all of the sort of comments that you make about your process, right? There are definitely good and bad ways to go about this process, meta commentary. I have said before, and I said this in Discord last week, a bad way to do meta commentary is to refer to the actual assignment. That's bad meta commentary. We don't want to do that. You don't want to say, for my persuasive essay, I picked veganism. I know I keep using veganism tilde, but it's the one I think of whenever I say it. Sorry. So for my persuasive essay, I've decided to talk about veganism. Don't reference the actual assignment you've been given. That's a little too meta. That's a little too aware of the situation. But meta commentary, successful meta commentary, does recognize that you are in an academic conversation, right? Counter arguing is part of meta commentary. You're like, okay, I have made a claim and I've supported that claim. So obviously, if there's a claim to be made, somebody else is on the other side of that fence. And this is what I think they would say, right? So the very act of counter arguing that we talked about last time is a kind of meta commentary. It's an acknowledgement of the process that you're participating in. An academic essay, right? That you're acknowledging that you are writing an academic essay, that you're presenting academic research. You know, meta commentary is that, you know, it does a lot of times use first person. It references what you've already done. The counter arguing area of your essay is one place where you can, you know, use this meta commentary to comment on your process. Another one, like I said a few minutes ago, was the transitions. So something like, well, now that I have made that point pretty clearly, let me complicate it and add another item. You know, let me sort of complicate this issue and introduce another consideration that we maybe not have thought of. Right? So you can transition. I'm completed this point and I'm moving on to this point. And this might change things, right? So that's a form of meta commentary where you can use your transitions to acknowledge the process that you're going through, right? So you can, show that you have an awareness. Meta commentary in general shows that you have an awareness of what you're doing. You're writing a persuasive essay, or more broadly, you are constructing a piece of persuasive writing of some kind. It doesn't necessarily even have to be an academic essay or a student paper or anything like that. You can use it for counter arguing. You can use it to help you sort of guide your reader through using transitions. You can also use it to clarify your point. So we talked about the translation recipe in the previous chapter, and it kind of goes along with this because the translation recipe mostly refers to if you're trying to translate what somebody else said into a more simplified way. You can do that to yourself as well. Like, you can explain it in kind of the fancy scholarly way. Then you can translate yourself. Say, so basically what I've been trying to say this whole time is, and you lay it out in a different, maybe more straightforward way at the end. Or maybe you can say something like, all of this evidence I've presented has led up to one main consideration. And you can introduce your most important piece of information last. You can sort of restate what you've said. You can say, you could even say, I am aware that there's a lot of data that I've presented on this topic. But the most important thing that you need to take away is, and you can kind of clarify your point, fine tune what you mean, and sort of translate for yourself, like what the main idea is for your essay. Now, just as a little disclaimer, some classes might be more open to experimental meta commentary than others. The humanities, like your English classes, history perhaps, psychology perhaps, the social sciences, they're a little bit more used to the scholars in our field. We're used to the scholars in our field talking in this way, a little bit more sort of with our voice present in the text of the essay. You might want to check, if you're in a science class, for example, like maybe you have to write an essay in chemistry. I think she assigns essays in that class, or maybe a biology class, or maybe something. You have to write an essay. So some of the hard sciences, the physical sciences, they might be a little bit more strict about just facts without your commentary needed. So that's something that you can say, hey, in English we learned about, sometimes academic scholars will add meta commentary where they just sort of, add their voice in, where they're sort of commenting on their process. Is that something that you allow? So, definitely if you're not sure, with the tone of the class, if it's appropriate. So some subjects are more conducive to more sort of entertaining and personalized meta commentary than others are. One final thing I'll mention is a good place for meta commentary in your paper, perhaps even in a more strict class like a science class, is the title. This is a good time for me to talk to you guys straight about the title. For several of you on your annotated bib, on your informative essay, I wrote, give your assignment a title. Like every paper, everything you do, any essay, annotated bib, report, presentation, anything you do in any class, it needs to have a title. And when I say title, I mean a descriptive title that is not the name of the assignment. The title of your essay is not persuasive essay. That's not the name of your essay. The title of your essay is not essay number 3, if that's an essay in a class, right? Like, it's not annotated bibliography. That's not the title of your assignment. You need to put some thought into a title that represents the specific topic being discussed in the assignment, in your essay or whatever, presentation, whatever it is. And so it doesn't have to be quirky or cheeky, but like look at like the titles of the chapters in here in the book. They have little quotations that describe them, like this one. But don't get me wrong, and that's the art of meta commentary, right? That's the name of the title, the chapter, the title of the chapter. And so that quote comes from, that's an example of meta commentary. Like one of the uses of meta commentary, which I don't know if I even went into, is a way to make sure the audience understands what you don't mean. Like, to make sure there isn't confusion. Like, okay, just to be clear, don't get me wrong, I don't mean XYZ. It might have sounded like that based on the evidence I presented, but don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is fill in the blank, right? And so the title of the chapter has meta commentary in itself. It sort of reflects the subject of the essay. The essay you're reading for this week on Thursday, the literary criticism day. I think I have the syllabus here. Yeah. So the title of it is, it's not super like meta comment. It's not super clever, but it's clear what it's about. Moral simplification in Disney's The Little Mermaid. So it tells, it's not just, they didn't title the essay The Little Mermaid. That's something when we'll talk about on Thursday. Don't title your essay the title of the text you're analyzing. That title's taken. That text already has that title. Your essay needs a title that's unique to your paper that is about that. So if this was a student paper and they were writing about this concept in The Little Mermaid, the title of their essay, a lot of students would be tempted to just title their essay The Little Mermaid because that's what they wrote about. So they put The Little Mermaid as the title. No, it needs to be something that's specifically descriptive of your topic. And so in this chapter, the reason why titles come into it at all is because the title is a place where you can include some of that meta commentary, where you kind of reveal your perspective on your topic. Also, thinking of a concise, sort of cleverly worded title helps you. It's like a thought exercise that helps you get a grasp on your topic. If you don't really fully understand the topic you're writing about, you won't be able to think of a title for your paper. You won't be able to it's an indication that you don't 100% know what your paper's about if you can't come up with a title that's descriptive of your topic, right? So if you can't come up with a title, that means the act of coming up with a descriptive title for your essay actually helps you get a firmer grip on what your paper really is about, right? So it kind of works both ways. Sometimes planning the title helps you firm up your thesis. So I know some students who are a little bit more advanced, like grad students and things like that, they will spend some time after they've done pre-writing and made notes and things like that. They'll spend some time creating the title. So there's a lot of my colleagues in grad school and stuff, they had the title of their paper long before they ever wrote the paper, because having that title gave them something to focus on and gave them sort of an anchor. They knew that's what the paper was about. And they knew, more specifically, they knew that that's what their perspective on this topic was, what the title was, right? So I won't harp on anymore about the title. But your assignment for Tuesday, which by the time you watch this is tomorrow, probably, is exercise 1 on page 131, which is at the end of chapter 9. I said page 131. I don't think that's right. I put the wrong page number. Whoopsie. Yeah, it's page 130, not page 131. I will send an email out to do that. But It says, take a paragraph from this book and dress it down, rewriting it in an informal colloquial language. Colloquial means like local slang, like the way that people from where you're from would say it. Then rewrite the same paragraph again by dressing it up, making it much more formal. Then rewrite the paragraph one more time in a way that blends the two styles. Share your paragraphs with a classmate and discuss which versions are most effective and why. So you're basically going to pick a paragraph from this chapter. I'll let you do either one, chapters 9 or 10. And I'll put this in the email that I send out to you. Chapter 9 or 10. You're going to pick a paragraph from the chapters, and you're going to rewrite it 3 times. You're going to rewrite it very informally and slangy. You're going to rewrite it very fancy. And then you're going to blend the two and make like a combination of the two styles. And have a third version. So the third version should be where you can just kind of pick elements from the first two and blend them together. So that's your exercise for reading response 15. Nobody has reached out to me with any questions as of yet, so either you haven't started it or you understand the assignment. But I will take some pictures like I've been doing. I'll take some pictures of the exercises, and I will also take some pictures of, in chapter 10, they give a few pages of templates for how to incorporate meta commentary into your essays. Some ideas for ways you can do that. So I will take some pictures of those templates, and I'll take a picture of what you need to do for the exercises. And let me know if you need a paragraph, right? So I do want you in the exercise, you need to include you need to include the original paragraph, right? You need to include maybe type out the original, or just tell me what page it's on, first paragraph on page 128, that kind of a thing. You need to tell me where the original paragraph is so I can identify it and then see what your rewritten versions look like. Okay, so I'll put all that in the email that I'm going to attach this video to. I should have sent this to you earlier, and I apologize for that, but the weekend got away from me, as it does sometimes. But I hope you guys are doing well, and you'll have this for at least a good 24 hours before we are going to see each other in Discord. And if you can't make it to Discord, you can watch this video and do the assignment and let me know if you have questions after the fact. But anyway, I will talk to you guys later, and then I'll make another video about the article we're reading for Thursday. So I'll see you there. Bye.